In homeopathy, there's a lot of do's and don'ts, and I just want to bust a few of those myths because they come up time and time again.
I did have a patient once who treated her family with homeopathy all her life, and she went in for hospital for a medical procedure, and she astounded the surgical team and recovery team by not needing any pain relief, any analgesics. After day one, she was just taking arnica. It wasn't a massive procedure, but nonetheless, it was still surgery. And then by day 4 or so, she was on full pain relief. And we got in touch and said, what's going on? Checked her prescription and went through everything. And the day before, she'd started drinking coffee. And the coffee did neutralise for her, in that instance, her arnica, whether it knocked out the arnica or sensitised her nervous system. But she stopped the coffee and continued with her remedies and got back to the stage where she didn't need the allopathic pain relief anymore.
I had a patient that came from Robert Davison. He treated this patient and told me the remedy, and it was medarinum, and he'd given 30C and nothing had happened, and I was very proud and cocky, so I took the case. I thought, yeah, it is medarinum, and I gave nothing had happened for Robert's prescription. Of course, that would have been on the machine. I gave a medarinum 30 with properly medicated, and it worked fine.
I think this always comes down to individuality. To me, this is... Hi, homies. It's Marcus Fernandez here, founder and director of CHE, the Centre for Homeopathic Education. After 5 years of releasing a brand new podcast episode every single week, Eugenie is taking a well-earned break and has kindly asked me to look after the show and spend some time with you all. Over the coming weeks, I'll be bringing you some inspiring conversations with guests from across the homeopathic world and beyond, along with the occasional tasters from our CHE Pro membership library, what many of our members affectionately call the Netflix of homeopathy. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner, a student, or simply someone who loves homeopathy, I hope these episodes leave you informed, inspired, and reminded of the incredible potential of this medicine we all care so deeply about. So thanks for joining me. And now let's get on with today's episode. Welcome, Dion. Welcome, Mike. Great to have you here. And I was saying before we started recording that we did a sort of similar session about nearly 10 years ago now, where we sat in a room and we just talked about homeopathy and different things, aspects of homeopathy. It was like, again, a homeopathy chinwag, and it was great. And we were busting some myths around homeopathy. So I want to sort of do that again today because, as you're aware, in homeopathy, there's a lot of do's and don'ts. And I just want to bust a few of those myths because they come up time and time again. And they also come up particularly, I know, with students when I'm doing tutorials, and you probably experience it yourself in supervision or teaching. And I just remember when I was a student, there was so much fear back in the sort of like late 80s, early 90s, where classical homeopathy was very dominant. And it was like, I remember being told if you were taking a homeopathic remedy, if there was a coffee shop, you had to cross the road from the coffee shop in case the odor of the coffee would antidote the remedy. People were really big into that. And so we've got some questions here from the listeners, what some of the myths they would like us to discuss. So talking about remedies and antidoting remedies, the first question, this is for Mia, about taking coffee or menthol whilst taking remedies. So let's kick off. Dion, what's your opinion of that? It's often toothpaste, isn't it? And brushing your teeth with a menthol, isn't it?
That's right, or with coffee. So that's a nice flavoured toothpaste. But I mean, it's widely spoken about that, you mustn't take your coffee or your mints or your minty toothpaste with treatment. But I don't say that to people, and I'd say that the majority of us are absolutely fine. I know I can take my remedies and coffee and mint doesn't antidote it, but patients being the greatest teachers, and I think I mentioned this on the CHE Pro session we did recently. I did have a patient once who she treated her family with homeopathy all her life, and she went in for hospital for a medical procedure, and she astounded the surgical team and recovery team by not needing any pain relief, any analgesics. After day one, she was just taking arnica. It wasn't a massive procedure, but nonetheless, it was still surgery. And then by day 4 or so, she was on full pain relief. And we got in touch and said, what's going on? Checked her prescription and went through everything. And the day before, she'd started drinking coffee. And the coffee did neutralise for her, in that instance, her arnica, whether it knocked out the arnica or sensitised her nervous system. But she stopped the coffee and continued with her remedies and got back to the stage where she didn't need the allopathic pain relief anymore. So there's little snippets like that where certain people at certain times can be hypersensitive, and I do think that they can neutralize their dose, but I think it's very far and few between. And you mentioned the coffee shop and cross the street and things like that. I think it has to be, really sort of quite in your face quantities. And just to flip it the other way around, I've known friends, practitioners who have accidentally dosed themselves with remedies and they can't neutralize it. They're taking tiger balm and coffee and mints and
Camphor,
and nothing knocks it out. So I think a well-chosen, well-indicated remedy would largely work through many of the antidoting factors. And it's mostly a scare story, but there is something there somewhere where hypersensitives or certain people will get knocked out by it.
I think as well, it goes back to that individuality. So some people are sensitive, more sensitive than others. Again, I think, like I said, it's an individual response. That patient you just mentioned then, I would think first question would be, yes, she was on full pain relief. The arnica stopped working. But was it that she needed a higher dose of arnica, like an increase in the potency? But then you said about the coffee, did she stop drinking coffee? Then she was on the same potency and it started to work again.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So it's really, I think it's always comes down to individuality. To me, this is one of the cornerstones of homeopathy. We talk about it all the time. It's what differentiates us from other types of treatment, that it's very individual. So if it's an individual person needs an individual remedy for their condition, then surely it's got to be individual according to the case at the time.
Yeah. I very much think that.
It's like Margaret Tyler. I always remember this as a student reading Margaret Tyler, Lycopodium in homeopathic drug pictures. She says, never give Lycopodium 200C. Never open a case or give Lycopodium 200C. Don't know if you remember that.
I do. And I think the origin of that story, I remember Robin Murphy talking about this. And if memory serves me, it was Pierre Schmidt, the homeopath.
Was it?
Schmidt opened a case with Lycopodium 200.
Yeah.
And then wrote in an article, I won't open a case with Lycopodium 200 again. And then not suddenly, but over time, everyone's going, we must never open a case with Lycopodium 200. Yeah. And it's similar to the saying, never start a case with a no-sode.
Yeah.
But what if it's the indicated remedy? Of course you do.
And again, and it goes back to that thing of, he probably had a case of a guy with a dodgy liver, give Lycopodium 200.
Exactly.
He aggravated, but then he's saying that, but it's very allopathic. What do you think, Mike, about that?
Oh, I think there's a few bits. I have seen some antidoting from dentistry, whatever that's to do with. But the idea that a cup of coffee, either homeopathy is powerful, which it is, in a very particular way, or it's not. And the idea that you have a polo mint or something, and you antidote the effect of remedies just seems a bit mad to me. But I would concur that I don't worry about antidoting or anything like that. I've seen it as I said, I've seen it a couple of cases of dentistry. I've seen it in cases of allopathic medicine very occasionally. But overall, I think it's overrated as a concept. As you say, other remedies antidoting, I've even found that not to be the case. It's like causticum and phosphorus. I've used it. As long as you're careful, I always double check to see it's indicated. It seems to be fine. I think it's just it's a bit like having another rule of why the case isn't working for the practitioner. And the practitioner goes, have you had any mints or anything? Because they're desperate to find out why it's not working. Obviously because of a neoclassical background or something where the remedy should undoubtedly work. But have you had any mint chutney in your curry or anything like that? To look for a reason why the remedy might not be working. I think it's more around that. But overall, I would just it's not a thing I've registered particularly, but I wouldn't be averse to seeing it if it happened.
No. So again, back to what we're saying, it's about the individual. So there is cases, obviously, but it's not, I think the thing is, the myth busting here is it's not a rule. It's not a principle. It's not a principle to say that remedies will always be antidoted if you have mint toothpaste or menthol or coffee. I ran a mother and baby clinic for many years in London. And I remember when I first started out and I was like, trying to have a clean mouth. Don't do it 20 minutes before brushing. And then the parents used to look at me like, are you joking? There's no way they could. Obviously the kids weren't drinking coffee. Parents probably were. But you just couldn't. It wasn't workable. So I just said, look, take that. Don't worry about it. And guess what? It still worked. Yeah. So I don't think remedies are as fragile as we think, personally, and I think we can get really into that. But then we've all got our things about remedies. I won't have remedies near a mobile phone, for example, or I won't put them through an X-ray. Whereas Emma, my wife, she will put them through. She says, of course they work. And she puts them through the x-ray at the airport. And I'm like, oh my God. And guess what? They still work. But I have that in my head that I've got me no-nos. What are your no-nos about things near remedies or storage of remedies?
Not too much whiskey. Don't drink. Tell them not to drink loads of whiskey or rum or cocaine and things like that just before taking your remedy. Would be a bit silly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
now, how do we practice in France? How do practitioners work in France and Spain and Italy? Where they drink coffee. What are you going to do? Take them off coffee? Like taking Italian, I'd say you can't have spaghetti. It'd be crazy. We'd be done for.
Yeah. It goes back to that point what Dion's saying, that actually the remedies work through these things. I mean, again, I used to work in a drug and alcohol project, and they were drinking gallons of coffee. It's like people were drinking, now they're drinking, smoking, and the remedies still work through. But that's the same with when people taking lots of medication. The remedies still can work through the medication.
Yeah.
So again, it's very individual, isn't it? About their vital force, the individuality of that. Yeah. What about you with storage with your remedies, Dion? Do you have any weird, peculiar things about storage?
And not really. And I don't mind them going through the x-ray at the airport either. So I'm not personally too bothered about that. And I suppose I don't keep them anywhere near mobile phones, but got Wi-Fi in the house, so it's all there anyway, really.
Yeah. Well, would you keep your remedies next to the Wi-Fi router?
I don't. But
no, but I'm saying, I'm not saying would you do it out of choice, but would you
change it right now if you want? But
because I know, as I said, it's that thing about electromagnetic stress or things like that.
No, not really.
No,
I think that
sunlight, sunlight.
Okay, this is going to take us into a different subject now, but related, and that is here's a good one for us: machine-made remedies versus pharmacy remedies.
Well, this came up as a question, so I'm glad you brought this up. This was a question that was sent in. One of the listeners sent this in. So yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Personally, I'm a big advocate of pharmacy-made remedies for a number of reasons.
Tell me your top 3 reasons, Dion. Top 3.
I think they're stronger. I think they last longer. And I think they work better. And I don't need any more than those reasons to go for that pharmacy-made remedy over a machine-made remedy. Yeah. I've got friends and colleagues who use machines and get results, but all of them that I'm thinking of right now, all of them say, you can't just make up your remedy stock and store them. You've got to make them straight away and use them soon because they tend to fade over time. So I'm thinking of straight away, that means they're not as good then if they fade away over time, because I know that the remedies that we make that are made in the pharmacy can last, despite the dates on them, they can last decades. And to talk about Robin again, I remember him coming over and having
Kent's. He had some from Kent's.
Exactly, grafted some of old Kent's remedies.
Yeah, he did.
And they were still working. So I think that when we come to this question of neutralization of remedies, by extrapolation, what we're talking about, the machine-made ones must be knocked out quicker if they don't store as long. So therefore, potentially, they're more fragile to the impacts of EMFs or X-rays. But I am firmly in the camp of the pharmacies. The other reason is, if we all bought machines and the pharmacies went out of business, that would be absolutely awful for us. But even like
it'd be awful for the pharmacists, wouldn't it?
It would be awful for the pharmacists, but the knock-on effect for us,
it would be
have an impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can I come back at that and bust that myth?
Go for it.
So, for 7 years, I used a machine, solely used a machine, right?
Yeah.
So when we were at college, we bought a machine with our class. And, Robert Davison. For people who don't know Robert Davison, he was a big figure in homeopathy in the UK. All three of us trained under Robert. And so what we did, we had this remedy machine and we would take turns every week. Somebody else would have the machine and we'd get sat like in a bottle and we'd make up remedies on the machine. Okay. Yeah. So we were doing exactly what you say don't do. We started to build up our remedy stock. And so I used to have all these remedies. And for 7 years of my practice, I used the machine. That's all I did all day long was using the machine. And it worked. No question about it. I went into hospitals. Well, you get hospital visits and when you have to treat people in the hospital, I'd go and make the remedies up I'd go to the chapel to make the remedies up in the machine and give them to the patient. And they worked. So I know they work. And I remember I came down with the flu and I started to feel achy and sore and all different things, really stiffness in my joints. And I was looking, I thought, I didn't have a machine with me. I think I left it at the clinic. So I'm at home. And all I had at home was these machine made remedies that I'd made 10 years previously. So I thought, I need some Rust Tox. And I had Rust Tox 30. And I thought, oh, these are made on the machine. And I remember having a conversation with Robin about machine made remedies. And he said that he didn't think there was as strong as pharmacy. So I thought, oh, I need to take more of it then and take it more often. So I started taking it, this Rust Tox, because it fitted my symptoms, like every 5 to 10 minutes, right? I'm taking Rust Tox. After about an hour and a half, I'd say, probably 2 hours, I started getting really itchy on my hands and my feet, getting really itchy, right? I thought, oh, that's weird. Carry on taking the Rust Tox. And I started coming out with these little blisters on my hands and my feet. And I thought, geez, this is suddenly dawned on me, I'm taking too much Rust Tox. So I stopped taking it, and the symptoms dissipated within half an hour. So that's my myth busting of these remedies. That was 10 years I hadn't used these remedies. I had them in the bottom of the cupboard. For me, that was, well, hang on a minute. That was I was starting to prove the remedy.
Yeah.
Because I was taking it so much. So what do you think of that, guys?
You shouldn't have done it in the chapel. You shouldn't have done it in the chapel.
What happened to the flu symptoms? Yeah, I got better. I can't remember all the details. A long time ago now, probably 20 years ago. But yeah, that dissipates. I felt better and it dissipated. I think I was taking too much of it. I was proving it. And
yeah, it sounds that way.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a real shocker for me. And then what was after that event, I slowly decided actually I've been 7 years on a machine. I wanted to do 7 years without a machine. And I started using the pharmacy remedies. So I like pharmacy remedies. I agree with you, Dion. I like to support the pharmacies. I like doing dispensing. I love that. I know some people just order direct, but I like dispensing it. And I like my little IKEA drawers with all my remedies in there, my stock bottles. So I'm with you on that side.
Yeah.
I like to use it. However, I would not be averse to using a machine if I needed to.
Yeah, I have used the machines. I mean, with the Traveling Homeopath Collective, I've used the machines at festivals, and I've seen people come back and come say that, thank you, that was really helpful. I've seen positive responses. I suppose the dividing line is that, rightly or wrongly, I have more confidence in the pharmacy made remedies. So when I prescribe, I want to prescribe with the remedy I feel most confident in its preparation.
Of course.
So, yeah, I put my hands up and say, and like I said, I've got friends who use machines and swear by them, and I believe them. But maybe it's back to individuality. For me, as an individual, I have biggest confidence in the pharmacy-made products over the machine ones, which I know, like you just said, it worked for you, and I've seen it work for others, and I've seen it work for prescriptions I've given.
So it's back to the individual, the individual practitioner again. So again, this is the theme. And I have to say, what do you think, Mike?
I was just going to say, name the great and mighty. I remember quite early on, I had a patient that came from Robert Davison. He treated this patient and told me the remedy, and it was Medorrhinum, and he'd given 30C, and nothing had happened. And I was very proud and cocky. So I took the case. I thought, yeah, it is Medorrhinum. And I gave it. Nothing had happened for Robert's prescription. Of course, that would have been on the machine. I gave a Medorrhinum 30 with properly medicated, and it worked fine. So that was my lesson in that. But I've worked at the alternative fear and so on, and yeah, it seems to work. But yeah, I absolutely think it's not as strong as the pharmacy.
Yeah. Did you know Robert had made it on a machine, or was that you just?
No, I think she said it was.
Okay. Yeah. So she said it was the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah. But like you say, it's individual, isn't it? Some people will do great on it. Other people won't.
Okay. So I think we can safely say it works. They definitely work.
Yeah.
But it's more of a personal, individual preference of the practitioner, whether to use machine remedies or whether to use pharmacy.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question here. Can homeopathy harm people? Can it do harm on people? So do you want to start with that one, Mike? What's your opinion of that? Can homeopathy do harm?
I think no, I don't think it can. As you said earlier in your introduction thing, that you hear so many silly ideas, particularly from what I call neoclassical homeopaths who call themselves classical. I don't think it is classical homeopathy anyway. But no, I don't. In my day, there was sort of Sheila Creasy would be talking about suppression and all this stuff. You think, how can it suppress? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So in answer to your question, very simply, no, I don't think homeopathy can cause harm. Practitioners, of course, can. That's a slightly separate subject, but I think, yeah, bad practice, bad practitioners, not sticking to the guidelines, not sticking to the overall, not rules, because I don't think you have rules, but the
We have
guidelines.
principles. We have
Principles, exactly. So, of course, you can go out on a limb and you can cause problems for patients, of course.
What do you think, Dion?
I think that there's different effects that you get when you prescribe a remedy. And if that individual's sensitive and you give the potency either too high or too low, they can aggravate. I think that you can prescribe out of the sequence of the evolution of remedies in the case and go too deep and blow out the top layer, which is one form of aggravation. And I think that we get hypersensitives who can just prove everything and frankly can often be better off doing herbal treatments, TCM or acupuncture for a little bit because they're just too hypersensitive to the potencies. So I think, but all of these that I'm mentioning are short term and their intensification of symptoms or the reappearance of symptoms that are back in the timeline, and it's all very transient and fleeting. So for all of these, absolutely no harm whatsoever. I think that if you take a case, prescribe a remedy and it doesn't suit an individual, 9 times out of 10, they stop taking it. They email and say, it's not as good as your last prescription for me. I don't feel good on this, or it doesn't feel right. And then we reassess and re-prescribe. And the human error always creeps in. No, nobody's 100%. Nothing's 100%. But I think theoretically, if somebody took a remedy and it strongly disagreed with them, so they get disturbances, mentals, generals, and local symptoms, and they were not conscious enough to think this doesn't suit me, but I think, no, I'm just going to keep going because I've been told to. And then I think if the prescriber assessed that and said, okay, the analysis is nothing's better, everything's worse, great, repeat prescription.
Yeah.
I think if you did that for anything like 6 months to 2 or 3 years, you could potentially go towards the idea of an ultimate proving where you would turn irritation and inflammation into possibly a more pathological state. But the bottom line here is you'd need a person who's stupid enough to keep taking it and a practitioner who's stupid enough to keep prescribing it. And then the passage of time of probably not less than a year. Maybe nobody's done it, but maybe then you could push approving from sensation, modalities and inflammation into actual physical pathology. But I don't see how we would get there by being sensible practitioners and patients being aware of their own body and health.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is continuous taking of the remedy. So
I'm talking huge detriment. I'm talking the individual experiencing huge detriment in their symptoms and a practitioner dumb enough to say, this is exactly what we want, keep going. And then patient compliance to do that.
Yeah.
I think theoretically, if you did that for the 2 to 3 year mark, yeah, why not? Why couldn't mercury cause an ulcer or sulfur cause a skin eruption?
In approving, but like when people are approving the remedy, you stop the remedy and it, like you said, it dissipates.
When the symptoms appear, you stop the remedy and it's all done in, on average, 6 weeks to 3 months. Yeah. So but I'm hypothesizing now. I'm thinking.
Of course. Yeah. I've never seen that. I don't know whether you've seen that, Mike. Have you ever seen that? No, because like you said, it doesn't really happen. But again, like you said, you're sort of, it's a theory, it's theorizing, isn't it? That.
Yeah. But going back to what Mike was saying and what you also mentioned at the start, the concept of homeopathy causing harm has been something that's been bandied around for many years and is used to instill fear and trepidation in students and practitioners alike, where I don't think it's at all justified. And I think we're talking the scenario spoken about where you'd need repeats of this for many years.
Exactly.
Rather than just a single pill and now you're doomed forever.
Exactly. And that's sometimes, like I said, and fear is exactly that. I remember being, again, when we talked about at the very beginning, where this fear was I go to these tutorials and this fear was, oh my God, if you give that one remedy, it's going to change, that's it. It's going to change that person's life forever and all this stuff. It was all, because people get into homeopathy because they think it's nice and natural and safe. And then you're told all this fear stuff. And it is fear, as you said. But I mean, look, between all three of us, Mike, how long have you been practicing for, Mike?
Oh, too long.
How long?
I suppose coming on 40 years or something?
Yeah, 40 odd years, 30 odd years, Dion, with you, yeah? 30,
Yeah, 92.
yeah, so that's 30 odd years for me. You're talking here, what? That's 100
100.
years.
Yeah.
100 years.
Yeah.
And between three of us in your clinical practice, have you ever seen that? No. Or what Dion was talking about? No, not at all. I've never seen it. What your theory of what you suggested. So we haven't seen it happen. But what you talked about, Dion, and I agree, what can happen is with the remedy is that you can go too deep too soon. This is in chronic cases, particularly too deep too soon.
Yeah.
It's not in the order. We're not following in the order of sequence of events and can cause an aggravation. A potency issue. Again, it's like overstimulating, but you stop the remedy and it dissipates. So my belief is fundamentally, and I stand on this, and nail my colours to the mast. Homeopathy works with the body, not against the body.
Yeah. And I think I mind, but my big thing, my little forte really is all this stuff about aggravation. It always used to be skin in the early days. You could aggravate the skin. That was they don't treat skin symptoms. People actually spoke like that. Well-known homeopaths wandering around now used to talk like that. And you just think, don't treat skin. It's just madness. So there's all that stuff coming. But even, of course, aggravation is part of homeopathy thinking in that things can get worse. But there's a lot you can do about it. And I think as a profession, we just haven't got that language clear about what you can do and how you deal with aggravation and all that sort of thing. So,
but that's patient management. It's knowing remedy reaction. Again,
exactly. Yeah.
What we do, we follow the patient. We follow their vital force. The vital force will always tell us what to do.
Yeah.
Won't it? And it's like, we got to follow. Why is it? Okay, what's happening now? Okay, this is the remedy reaction. Okay, we may need to reduce the frequency, or we need to change the potency. And I still stand by this. I don't care how long you've been practicing for. If you treat somebody for the first time and you give them a remedy, you don't know what is going to. You have an idea, but you can't because you don't know their vital force. Do you? It's like, how can you know it until you start treating that vital force?
As long as you know what to do. If things don't go the way you'd love them to be, the sort of perfect simillimum and the patient feed, but it hardly ever happens. Yeah. As long as you know how to handle and, as you say, manage the case, then you're going to be okay.
Well, it's a combination of all those things, isn't it? Yeah. Anything else to say on that myth? We're going to bust that one. Busted. I need a sound effects machine. Busted.
Yeah, broken glass.
Yeah, or something like that. Anyway, another question here. You can only take one remedy at a time.
Oh my God, a shocking question.
What do we think there? Mike, you start. One remedy at a time.
Well, it's always best to, for really simple reasons. You've got to manage the case. You need to know what's going to happen. And if you know the remedy you're giving, you have some sort of picture of what might happen, whether it's within the picture of the remedy or not, you've got more control over the case. You go to these sort of things where there are like 20 remedies, like the Narayani stuff, isn't it? I found there's loads of them, high potency often. Doesn't have to be Narayani, it can be anything. How do you know what's causing what effect to the patient? I've done it in my early days. I used to give combinations. I think it was probably Robert Davidson or Ken Metzon's 3 for rheumatism, and they work really well. And I think I have no problem with that as long as it works really well. It's when things aren't going in the right way that we just talked about earlier. How do you know what's doing what? You give them 10 remedies, all high potency. You have no idea of how they're working together. I think it's a bit crazy. So for me, it's like the less remedies, if you like, the more understanding you have of what will happen if the unexpected happens.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm in agreement. I think it's all, again, back to the individual case, whether it's an acute case, whether it's a chronic case, it's all individual, isn't it? I'm not against combination remedies, because a lot of time people get into homeopathy through combination remedies like hay fever, the teething, things like that. However, the caveat to that is it's okay, you're taking it and it's working, it's great, and then it stops working. And I think it's not the combination, it's one of those remedies is helping, but you don't know which remedy it is. So you can't change the potency. You can't, today you're a bit stuck.
Yeah.
So again, from a learning perspective, especially like for people listening who are home prescribers and prescribing at home for acutes and things like that, it's really good I feel, to learn giving a remedy and seeing the remedy reaction, because that's how you learn these remedies. That's what I think. And I think but again, in chronic cases, particularly, and I know Dion will have something to say about this as well, you give the indicated remedy, but they may need an organ support for the liver, for example.
Yeah.
So you may need to do that, or you may need to give a orthopathic prescription at the same time giving the indicated remedy, or you may need to give a miasmatic NoSed as an intercurrent as well as the indicated remedy.
Yeah.
So I think it's very individual, but I agree, if you're throwing everything together, I think there's circumstances for all those situations. If that's all I've got, like warm mix, I've used warm mix a lot, really great. And I'm talking about really serious situations, people in hospital with sepsis and things like that. It works. There's no question about it. But would it be my first? I'm always looking for the remedy, personally. I'm always looking for the indicated remedy. If I can't see it for whatever reason, then I will use what's in my toolbox.
Yeah.
Dion, what do you think?
I think that everything has its time and its place. And I think that, we can easily talk about scenarios, end of life or multiple lesions, homeopathic polypharmacy, where, okay, this is not a one remedy case. And for me in clinic, if there's a hybrid complex case and it's treated over the years, the idea is to refine it and get it back to that simple constitutional classical, but that's the destination. That might not be where we start out. But that is the best learning experience, when you can give one remedy and then assess that remedy reaction. Like you, the Narayanis and the Banerjee protocols encounter people who've used them and used them successfully on themselves or prescribed them. I would say that when the practitioners of homeopathy lean into polypharmacy and protocols, it can be quite a quick step into being clinically applicable. But as soon as that doesn't work, they're floundering if they haven't put the work in, because the truth is there's no shortcut with materia medica. There's just hard study and clinical experience. And you can get good results with polypharmacy and the protocols, but you don't substantiate or consolidate your materia medica learning like you do when you study one remedy and give one remedy. So end of the day, it's all good. Use it appropriately for each individual. But I don't think that, you started off by saying 2 remedies. Our history from Hahnemann up to now was Hahnemann was a miasmatic therapeutic prescriber with very often a lesion therapeutic remedy in the morning, and then more of a miasmatic prescription using the polycrest, but also the forerunners to the nosodes in the afternoon. And he did that for a large part of his clinical life. Of course, James Compton Burnett, but then it's part of what we use.
Exactly. And again, back to what we're saying, it's like, I think each has its place, but again, it's about discrimination, isn't it? It's about learning when to do that and the most appropriate time. And I agree. And that's my point. I think, especially when you're studying homeopathy, that you want to really learn materia medica and what these remedies do. And like you said, it can be a quick fix. And sometimes we need that, or a quick, I know it's clinically it's needed at that point, but I think and I don't know whether you both agree, but when you're treating very sick people, often it's their vital force is very fragmented, and like I said, you can't see really that clearly. But the healthier they get, well, more back into a state of health, and the clearer the remedy picture is. And like I said, the ultimate state really is to see what they are, the constitutional remedy or whatever that is. So it's wherever, again, very individual. Where is their vital force? Yeah, all we need to do is follow the vital force. Anything else on that? Anything else you want to add to that, guys? I think we're all in agreement there, I think, really.
Yeah.
I think we are. Yeah.
Okay, there's a question here about potency. Now, I'm glad this has come up. So the question is, should you only use a specific potency at all times? And I hear this a lot from very renowned homeopaths and people like that saying, oh, never use a 200C. And we mentioned about Margaret Tyler and came from Pierce Smith, but this thing about never give it in that potency, never do that and that. But to me, that doesn't make sense.
No.
All right. It just doesn't make sense. It's about the potency is about, again, the person's vital force. It's like, that's what we're trying to match, aren't we? So if we talk about 30C is this and 200C is that, and 1M's this and then we're almost like it's allopathic.
Yeah.
it's saying the key to the Ferrari is as powerful as the Ferrari, but it's not, is it? The remedy is a key to a lock. It turns the key, turns the ignition, the power's in the engine, like the vital force. So what's your thoughts on that about potency? Dion, we'll go to you first.
Well, I think the potency it's ideal to try and match the potency to the vitality. Is this a 10M case or is this a 6C case? And that depends on that individual at that point in time. But then it's complicated further by not everybody reacts uniform to a 10M being high or a 6 being low, because there's people who flip that around and do it the exact opposite.
Exactly, yeah.
And something that I try and catch myself for and put into teaching in particular is whenever I hear the words never and always, I'm thinking, you're not individualizing now.
Yeah.
As soon as you tell me never and as soon as you tell me always, then I'm now alert and thinking, okay, that's an anecdotal story. That's one person at one point in time. We've lost the individuality because now you're telling me a rule that I must never do this or always do that. And I'm not really interested, but I listen to your anecdotal story, but I know that's not a clinical audit of X amount of patients with this remedies and these potencies, because it's randomized. It's different. It depends on the vitality.
Exactly. I always remember this working with a craniosacral therapist. There was some research done at the Westminster University with homeopathy and cranial workers. And so what would happen is they would say it was their patient. I would treat them homeopathically. I'd take the case and decide what remedy I was going to give them. And then we had a third person. So I'd select what remedies I thought in all different, say 3 remedies I thought maybe this person needed in all different potencies, 6C, 30C, 200, 1N, 10M. And then the cranial sacred therapist would have on their head, and they'd be connecting with their, what we call the vital force. They call it what do they call it? The breath, the tide. And so I give the remedy, say with CPS6C, give that. The cranial sacred therapist doesn't know what they're getting. The patient doesn't know but they would hold it on the chest, on the couch, lay on the couch, having cranial. And the cranial sacred therapist would then feel the action of the remedy by just holding it on their vital force. It was incredible. And so I'd given 6C and they were said, no, don't really feel anything at all. Nothing really going on. Okay, try that. I'll try the next potency, maybe a 30, whatever. Yeah, I'm starting to feel some now and I can feel it. And then you try it on a 1M. No, nothing at all. Then you try on a 200. Oh yeah, I can really feel this action on this. And then I would go into the next remedy, try this one. Oh, no, not really anything. On a 10M, I try the 10M, because we're led to believe that 10M is really strong. Nothing at all. No, not nothing at all. Then you give them the 6C and they go, oh my God, this is really, I can really feel this in the uterine area and it's really going down. So and then I'll try to trick them and give them the 10M again, and they go, no, nothing. I don't feel anything. Remember, they don't know what I'm giving to the patient to hold. So it really taught me a lot about actually potency. We can't think of it as an allopathic way of thinking. It's not about. I remember Robert's been mentioned a lot on today's, but I always remember Robert saying that homeopathic remedy is just a bottle of white pills. The reason for giving it makes it homeopathic, and that's what we tend to forget, don't we? It's the reason for giving it. That's what's making it homeopathic. Mike, what do you think?
I agree entirely. The number of times I generally follow the sort of format that I was taught for prescribing: pathology, lower potency, all the rest of it, high mentals, higher potency for mentals, all that's in my sort of thinking, and I've always done that. But the number of times you've gone to your remedy kit or your case, looked for the remedy, you hadn't got it in the potency you thought you wanted to give, and gave something all you've got and give it, and it works absolutely fine. There can be loads of cases like that. So I think the important thing is the remedy, really.
Always.
The selection of the remedy. I'm not too worried about potency. I'm sorry. I thought you were carbo-veg. I was going to give you a 10M just before you died, but unfortunately I've only got a 6C. It just doesn't make sense. So it's fine-tuning. For me, potency is fine-tuning.
I always think of it like tuning in a radio. The remedy has got to be the number one thing, like cures like. It's got to be the right remedy, isn't it, in that match?
Yeah.
First principle of homeopathy. But the potency is the tuning in.
Yeah.
And this is why I know you're a big fan as well, Dion, of LM potencies. Because I feel with LM potencies, they're so flexible, either the frequency or the succussion I love LM potencies because I feel you can really finely tune with LMs. And I always start on LM1. I don't know why people start on LM6s. I'm quite a simple bloke. I like to
I'm the
start
same.
on number
I'm the
one.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I rarely probably go beyond an LM3, but I've had people on LMs, I don't know whether you have, Dean,
Yeah.
as well, like for a year, 18 months on beautiful cases, just really gentle, really lovely. And I tend to find that when you ask people, they get really connected to taking it as well and the succussion. And I also find with people, they'll come back and say, "Oh, how are you on the remedy? Oh, I really haven't felt like taking it for the past couple of weeks." And often I know it's an indication that we've come to the
They've
end of
held
that
it off. Yeah.
end of that LM. So yeah, what's your opinion, Dion? What's your opinion of?
I think that in the vast majority of our cases, the right remedy will work regardless of what potency you choose. There are individual cases where that's not quite right, and there is a Goldilocks zone of optimum potency, but we're talking 95% people. You got the remedy right, it's working in the potency, and then it's back to that fine tuning. I think that also it's just worth noting that Hahnemann experimented with this. He wrote to all the journals and suggested that the homeopaths in Germany all use 30C for 1 year, and then we'll collate all the details and the data and get a handle on the potency idea. And true scientific brain, of course, that'd be fantastic, but it wasn't workable because the homeopaths weren't going to limit themselves to 30s.
So he did. Sorry, Dion. He proposed this, did he?
Yeah, he proposed that everyone use 30C for 1
Wow.
year, and then we
Wow.
collect the data and crack
Yeah.
the potency issue. He also did experiments with optimum potencies for different remedies. So 24C for sulfur, 9C for capsicum. I'm going off my memory now, so it
Yeah.
might not be 100% right. And in both these experiments, he realized it's a cul-de-sac. So therefore I drop it. True scientific brain. My hypothesis is no, it doesn't work. Forget it. So he threw that out. And it is back to the individualization of the potency to the vitality of the individual.
Absolutely.
But like Mike says, you go to your remedy box, you wanted a 30, you've only got a 1M. If it's the right remedy, it's going to be working.
Absolutely.
And then you can refine that other aspect later.
Exactly. I remember that I had a case like that. Lady, she had a terrible bereavement, and she phoned me. And if I had a choice, I would have given her Ignatia 200 or whatever because she was in a real state. I said, "Have you got any Ignatia at home?" She said, "Yeah, I have." I said, do you know what potency is? She went and got it from the cupboard, and it was a 6C. So that's all I've got. I said, "Take that, take it every couple of hours, and let me know how you are tomorrow." And she texted me within 2 or 3 hours saying, "Oh my God, I really feel it's had an effect," and blah, blah, blah. Like you're saying, it's always about the remedy first. The remedy is everything. The potency, tune it in. Whatever you've got, use it in an emergency situation like that. But obviously, we like to fine tune it. And we do that in practice, don't we? The patient comes back, they have a reaction, maybe, or they phone you, okay, all this mucus and snot's coming out, I've taken the remedy. Okay, another question here is, to use homeopathy safely, you need to absolutely have an expert homeopath consult, or else you may cause grave aggravations or muddle the case.
Oh,
Dion, over to you first.
Yeah, but we're rehashing some of the information from earlier again.
Yeah.
I think, because we're talking about, there's potential for aggravations. Yes, there's the potential for going too high or out of sequence with our remedies. But the essence of the statement, I actually agree with, because if you have got a complex case and you've got somebody who's trained for years in homeopathy, they're going to be much better at unraveling that and following it through, as opposed to somebody who's done a few months and used to throwing in some combination mixes, which generally they're hitting lesions or therapeutics, not exclusively. But what happens if there's another lesion layer or something else becomes activated or an etiology occurs between an appointment and you haven't got the protocol to deal with that?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, we can have superficial effects and we can have very deep, profound effects. And the complex long-term treatment of a case history uses both of those at different times where appropriate. And at bottom line, you do need to be trained to know what you're doing to be able to unravel these cases if it's long and complex and hybrid, is my opinion.
Yeah, I always say that for acute prescribing, home prescribing, I'm a big fan of that. People using homeopathy at home.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, once you start getting into the more chronic cases, then I think you do need to see a homeopath because, like you said, cases, especially chronic cases, can be quite complex. There could be, allopathic medications in that. And I think the worst thing that can happen, and we say this to students, don't we? Like when they're first learning, just be careful taking on cases that require, like you said, more of an expert opinion, where you can be more objective as well as with a clinical experience, and you can see the case in its totality. So, often I'll do home prescriber Q&A sessions, and people say, "What remedy can you give for diabetes? What remedy can you give for asthma, eczema, and what?" And it's again allopathic thinking. There's not just one remedy for that. It's more complex than that, and it's like we have to unwind the case, especially in chronic diseases. And I always say to people when they come see me with a chronic disease, and I don't know whether you guys do the same. After the first consultation, I'll often say to people, say they've come in with eczema and they've had eczema for 12 years. I said, look, this for every year you've had it could take a month to clear. So we're talking about 12 months here, especially if they've had medication and suppression going on. It could take 12 months. Okay. However, let's review after 3 months and see how we're getting on. Because I normally know within 3 months, I'm going to see some kind of shift within 3 months. So I think sometimes you need to. And again, I think what that does, it sets your stall out, and it's about managing expectations that chronic disease it's not an event, is it? It's often a process, and it's the same going backwards. You need to unwind it in order to restore health and vitality.
Yeah, exactly. It's one thing to remove symptoms, but then after that, it's why are the symptoms there in the first place? What's the predisposition, susceptibility? And
exactly. Miasmatic activity or whatever it is. Exactly. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, no, you said it all. I agree.
You concur. Come on, Mike.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think as well, especially for students studying homeopathy, I think, like I said, it can really knock the confidence if they're taking on cases that are actually more complex, because like you said, you haven't got the experience about remedy reaction or really case management, isn't it? It's case management.
Well, also, often you start up treating family.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that. I'm not saying it's impossible. Very difficult. You get involved in all sorts of stuff you wouldn't normally as a practitioner. You haven't got the separation you have as a practitioner. So, yeah, got to be quite careful with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also I see this in acute prescribing with people. It's like with remedies, it's if that remedy hasn't worked in 1 minute, 34 seconds, they're on to the next remedy. Because you've lost your objectivity, especially a family member.
Yeah.
It's like you're just going from 1 minute to remedy. Whoa, hang on a minute. Now, if you speak to a practitioner, often what happens is, give pulsatilla, give it 30C, give it twice a day, and let me know how you got on in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Because they've got that experience. It's a cough, it's a cold, whatever. Sometimes the body, I think homeopathy, like a bell curve, I think it makes it more efficient, the acute, but you still got to go through that beginning, middle, and end with the acute.
Yeah.
You still got to do it, but it'll do it, I think, more efficiently around that.
100%.
Actually, just on that, you're talking about qualified homeopaths and people like that. Let's just talk a little bit about homeopathic education. There's different schools out there, and Mike, you run a school, and obviously I run a school. And what do you think needs to be in an education? Or what do you think people need to learn to become a competent homeopathic practitioner? Mike?
Keep that right to the last, don't you?
Yes.
Probably the biggest question we've been asked. The principles of homeopathy. And I'll say professionalism is a funny word, but by that I mean knowing your limitations, knowing what you know, and also knowing, just as important, what you don't know. That's where we get into muddy water with this stuff. And knowing what you need to know. And what you need to know is defined by the institution, the college, the teachers. And it's for the college to decide what, to some extent, and this is a broad church, but what students need to learn, what the principles are. That's where we get into muddy waters, because there's so much disagreement about what should be taught and what is homeopathy, what is not homeopathy. It gets really confusing. And essentially, at the top of it all is safety, patient safety, and adhering to those basic principles that homeopathy is.
Yeah.
Which isn't difficult to teach, No. And also taking the fear out of it. This has come up a few times in what we've talked about. Once you see fear creeping in, one, you've got teachers who aren't experienced, almost certainly, because as you get through, I've been terrified in practice in the early days, as we all have, the things that happen. You don't have to learn through them.
Yeah.
We've all, I think the three of us are saying, with all our experience, we've not been frightened. Once fear creeps in, then you start making wrong decisions. It goes wrong. But yeah, the basic homeopathy, the principles of homeopathy, not difficult to teach. more difficult to learn, agree that it's safe, very effective.
I'm the only one who doesn't run a school of homeopathy.
But you've taught extensively.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I'd have to disagree with Mike when he says it's not difficult to teach. I think it is a skill to be able to engage a class and pass on what could be very exciting, but also very dry information, because part of it is just hard work. It's a complex medical system. It's not, oh, here's 20 drugs or 50 drugs, you're fine, off you go. It's thousands and thousands. It's vast. But I'm dodging the answer here. I think there's three things. You need your AMP and pathology. You need your materia medica, and in that I include the repertory. And then you need your philosophy, and in that I include the case taking. And I think when you've got those three things taught by different people and taught well, then after a number of years, you would now have a student who can start their clinical training when they've got that foundation, and then they're guided through that. And yeah, it's something that just takes years. It takes years to accumulate that information, and it takes a number of years to actually put that information into practice and see the results clinically, and then steer those complex cases over time.
Yeah, like you said, it's the basics, isn't it? I think the philosophy informs your case taking, doesn't it? It informs your case taking, it informs all aspects. The anatomy, physiology, like you said, you need to have that understanding. You need to have that understanding of the body, and then your materia medica hangs off that as well, doesn't it? So if you're learning about the cardiovascular system, then it's good to know about the heart remedies like lacuses or the organ support like critigas or whatever the remedies are. I always say you become a homeopath. It's a becoming. It's different than just learning facts. Like you do learn facts, well, issue or whatever.
Yeah,
there's more to that. It's an art and it's a science, isn't it? And I think
very much. And yeah, and that's the case taking, isn't it? Because
that's the case taking.
You're talking to people and they might be anxious or scared or fearful. They might be dying.
Yeah.
And you've got to learn how to have a safe connection and good communication with people who are in really quite precarious situations.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can effectively do that from a purely academic perspective. You have to have humanity. You have to have sympathy, empathy, and hope. You have to have those things to manage cases.
Yeah. And I think that I was talking to a doctor about this the other day and saying that we've lost the art of the bedside manner, that we've lost that art of, in medicine. You said, we're just just prescribing drugs, and we've lost that. And I think that's part of the becoming a homeopath, isn't it? That's the art. That's the side that but we need both. We need science and we need the art. Because like I said, in a consultation, things will shift within a consultation, just a conversation.
But yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that bedside manner, and particularly if you read some of the older homeopaths, especially Ellis Barker, from my own biased, prejudiced opinion, from friends who are medics, they're in the paradigm of allopathic polypharmacy. That's what we're doing. And of course, they can do wonderful things, particularly for trauma and emergency. But long-term chronic disease, they're helping their patients survive longer, not necessarily with really quality time. Whereas with homeopathy, we can see absolutely wonderful things over time. And I do think that cultivates a good bedside manner where I've seen this before. I know it's likely to take 2 years or 3 years, but I've seen these results come through and I've seen these cases optimized. And now you can have the reassurance that a bedside manner will give somebody because you've seen the results. And I can't say that allopathy follows that trajectory because they're not as good as us.
Well, I always say it's like a scale. If I'm in a car accident, the first place I want to be is a hospital. I'll be taking arnica if I'm conscious, and that does happen to me. But if I've got a chronic disease, I'm going to look at other ways to get my body to heal itself before I go down the allopathic route. And I think it's like that, isn't it? Because emergency medicine, phenomenal. I've seen it firsthand. It's amazing. However, it's about a scale and it's about choice. And back to that whole, it's a paradigm shift, isn't it? It's all that healing wisdom you're ever going to need is within you. And we've just got to tap into that. And I think when, like you said, from clinical experience as well, you're coming from a place of certainty. And it's something that's very quiet, but people feel that certainty when you have treated many cases. And this is back to like skeptics, isn't it? Same thing with skeptics. Like, I'm sure all three of us, like you hear skeptics saying, oh, homeopathy doesn't work, or you're at a party and they're saying homeopathy is a load of rubbish. It's like them saying the sky's pink, or sometimes it can be pink. The sky's green or the grass is blue, because from clinical experience, it's like what you can't really comprehend really what they're saying because it doesn't even make sense. So I think clinical experience is above all, and I think that's part of becoming the homeopath, isn't it? You've got to see cases, you've got to see that.
I think it's really, the whole bedside manner thing is really interesting. What that means, what it means. And you can watch students as I'm taking cases, watch practitioners taking it, and there's this thing that happens because the person knows what they're doing. Imparts a kind of energy to the case itself, to the patient. I just think that's such a fascinating area. I remember Ken Metzen once saying to me, what's the point of homeopathy and all this? What do you do for the patient? What are you looking for? And I waffled on about miasms and all the rest of it. And he just said, just remember, always make the patient feel better when they walk out of your consulting room and when they walk in. It sounds so simple, but actually it's such good advice.
It's great advice.
It's such good advice because it's about your case, taking it all around that, your knowledge, your materia medica, instilling the confidence, the sense of, you want to say, getting someone to feel that there's hope. All those things come into that. Make the patient feel better when they walk out and when they came in.
I think as well, it's about listening. We can't think and listen at the same time. To be truly present with somebody, you have to be present to deeply listen. And I think, again, that's the subtle art, isn't it, of case taking?
Yeah.
And you can't ever forget that.
Yeah. No.
Well, listen, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We could talk all night. We've answered some questions here. I'd like to thank you. We've got to do this again sometime. I think it was great. And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dion Tabrett, and thank you, Mr. Mike Bridger.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, of listening to this episode. So, until we meet again.
Take care.